Ever feel like the financial game is rigged? You work hard, you pay your taxes, and you follow the rules. While the ultra-wealthy seem to live in a parallel universe where the laws simply don't apply to them. But this isn't just luck. It's a $32 trillion shadow economy hidden right under our noses. It is built on shell companies, phantom offices, and a legal system designed to fail. Facilitated by the biggest banks in the world, the architects of this global heist who profit from the secrecy. And the worst part? This missing money is exactly why your schools are crumbling and your taxes keep rising. You are paying for their escape. Today, we are opening the vault. Welcome to the story of the great offshore lie.
Have you ever looked at your pay stub, seen the chunk of cash missing for taxes and wondered, does everyone really play by these same rules? Picture this for a second. Imagine a pristine, sun-drenched island in the Caribbean. The water is turquoise, the sand is white, and the palm trees are swaying in a gentle breeze. It looks like paradise, a place designed for relaxation. But on one specific street in this paradise, there stands a modest 5-story office building. It's unremarkable. It looks like any generic office you might find in a suburban office park. Yet, this single building is the registered home of over 18,000 corporations. Think about that math for a moment. That is more registered companies than there are actual human beings living in the town. How is that physically possible? The answer is simple. It's not physical. It's a phantom infrastructure. And inside this phantom infrastructure lies the darkest secret of modern financial history. What you are about to discover might fundamentally change how you view the global economy. We aren't talking about a few $1 million hidden in a mattress. We aren't even talking about the kind of money a successful CEO makes in a lifetime. We are talking about the shadow economy. Current estimates suggest that there are at least $32 trillion hidden away in offshore tax havens right now. Let that number sink in. $32 trillion. To put that into perspective, that is more than the entire gross domestic product of the United States and China combined. It is a pile of wealth so vast that it creates its own gravitational pull, yet it remains completely invisible to the IRS, to global regulators, and effectively, to the public eye. You might be thinking, well, isn't that just smart planning? Isn't that just how business works? Stay with me, because that is exactly what they want you to believe. They want you to think this is just a loophole or a byproduct of a free market. But the reality is far more sinister. This is not accidental. It is architectural. This system was built, brick by brick, law by law, to ensure that the rules you follow simply do not apply to the ultra-wealthy. Have you ever felt like the financial system is rigged? No matter how hard you work, the finish line keeps moving further away. That feeling isn't paranoia. It's a reaction to a very real phenomenon known as the architecture of corruption. This isn't about legitimate commerce. This is about a parallel universe where money is stripped of its national identity, washed clean of its origins, and shielded from any social responsibility. We are looking at white-collar crime evolved into an art form. This $32 trillion vault didn't appear out of nowhere. It was facilitated by the most prestigious names in banking, the very institutions that manage your savings accounts and 401ks. It turns out that organized crime isn't just about shadowy figures in back alleys. Sometimes it's the operating model of Wall Street itself. But how do you hide an amount of money that large? How do you make $32 trillion vanish from the face of the earth without raising a single alarm bell at the IRS? It sounds like a magic trick, but it's actually a sophisticated feat of engineering. To understand the crime, we have to look at the tools they use to commit it. So if we want to crack this vault open, we have to understand the mechanism. We need to look at how a billionaire in New York can own a yacht in the Mediterranean through a company in Panama that is owned by a trust in South Dakota, without his name ever appearing on a single piece of paper. The first step in this illusion is something called the shell company, and the way it works is more shocking than you can imagine. Before we peel back the layers of this financial onion, I want to take a brief moment to acknowledge something. This reality is heavy. It's easy to feel small or even cynical when we are looking at numbers this massive and a system this entrenched. If what we've discussed so far resonates with you, if you feel that gnawing sense that the average person is carrying the burden while the elite carry away the profits, I want to know. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Are you surprised by the sheer scale of this $32 trillion figure? Or is this exactly what you expected from the global financial system? I read through the comments because this isn't just a lecture. It's a conversation, and your perspective matters. And look, digging into the architecture of corruption isn't exactly the type of content that mainstream algorithms usually favor. We are trying to build a community here dedicated to financial literacy and uncovering the history they don't teach in schools. So, if you believe these stories need to be told, and you want to keep exploring the dark side of money and power with me, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It might seem like a small action on your end, but your support is literally the fuel that keeps this investigation going. It sends a signal that you value the truth, and it helps us wake up more people to what is really happening behind the curtain. Thank you for being part of this. Now let's get back to that magic trick I mentioned. We need to understand how you build a financial labyrinth so complex that not even the FBI can find the center of it. It starts with a concept that sounds harmless, but is actually the primary weapon of modern financial warfare: the shell company. So, how do you actually make an elephant disappear? In the world of high-stakes finance, the elephant is a massive fortune, let's say $100 million in profit from a real estate deal in Manhattan or a tech merger in Silicon Valley. If that elephant stands in the middle of the room, everyone sees it. The IRS sees it, the regulators see it, and the public sees it. The goal of the offshore world is not to move the elephant, but to build a labyrinth of mirrors so complex that when you look at the elephant, all you see is empty space. To understand this transformation, you have to visualize a set of Russian nesting dolls. Those wooden dolls where you open the big one to find a smaller one inside, and another inside that one, and so on. In the financial underworld, these dolls are what we call shell companies. A shell company is exactly what it sounds like: a hollow exterior. If you were to visit the headquarters of a typical shell company in, say, the British Virgin Islands or the Cayman Islands, you wouldn't find a bustling office floor. You wouldn't find receptionists answering phones, product managers rushing to meetings, or a factory producing goods. You wouldn't find any employees at all. What you would find is a mailbox. Sometimes, not even a mailbox. Just a file folder in a lawyer's cabinet. Here is the hidden truth that feels almost too absurd to be real. There are single buildings in places like Georgetown, Cayman Islands, that serve as the registered headquarters for over 18,000 different companies. It is a physical impossibility for actual business to occur there. But in the eyes of the law, these entities exist. They can own property, they can hold patents, and most importantly, they can hold bank accounts. Now, let's take a journey with that money. Let's say a billionaire in New York wants to hide that $100 million. He doesn't just wire it to an account with his name on it in Switzerland. That's amateur hour. That's how you get caught. Instead, he initiates a sequence of decisions designed to sever the legal link between him and his wealth. The money leaves New York and is transferred to a company registered in Ireland, ostensibly for consulting fees. That Irish company is owned by a Dutch holding company. The Dutch company then pays royalties for the use of intellectual property to a company in the British Virgin Islands. And who owns the company in the British Virgin Islands? This is where the magic happens. It isn't owned by the billionaire. It's owned by an anonymous trust settled in Panama or the Cook Islands. A trust is a strange legal creature. It's not a person. It's not exactly a company. It's an agreement. Effectively, the money is now legally separated from the person who put it there. If the IRS comes knocking on the billionaire's door, he can look them in the eye and honestly say, "I don't own that money." And technically, on paper, he's right. The trust owns it. And the trust is governed by laws that make it a crime to reveal the beneficiary. The paper trail hits a dead end. The elephant has vanished. It is crucial to understand that we are no longer living in the era of Al Capone. The behind-the-scenes reality of modern money laundering doesn't involve suitcases full of cash buried in the desert or hidden in false walls. The impact of the digital revolution on financial crime has been absolute. Today, money is just information. It is zeros and ones on a server. When we talk about moving money offshore, nothing physically moves across the ocean. No boat carries gold bars from Wall Street to Nassau. It is simply a keystroke. A ledger entry changes in a server in New Jersey, and another ledger entry updates in a server in Zurich. The entire system is an abstraction. The complexity of the shell companies is designed to scramble this data, to create so much digital noise that the signal, the origin of the funds, is lost forever. This architecture creates a profound sense of injustice because it requires resources that are simply out of reach for 99% of the population. You need expensive lawyers, compliant bankers, and a mindset that views laws not as boundaries, but as obstacles to be navigated. The average person tries to minimize their taxes. The ultra-wealthy try to eliminate their fiscal existence entirely. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because there is a psychological element here that is fascinating. Why go to such lengths? It's not just about greed. It's about control. It's about the journey of placing yourself above the sovereign power of the state. When you utilize this system, you are essentially declaring that you are a citizen of nowhere, and therefore subject to the laws of no one. These revelations are often buried in dense financial reports, but when you strip away the jargon, what you see is a deliberate mechanism to hollow out the tax bases of entire nations. Schools, roads, hospitals, the very fabric of society depends on tax revenue. When $32 trillion is siphoned out of that cycle, the impact is felt by everyone who doesn't have a shell company in Bermuda. The tax burden shifts. The middle class pays more because the top tier has opted out of the system. This isn't a victimless crime. It is a slow-motion heist where the vault is the global economy, and the getaway car is a complex network of legal entities that exist only to deceive. And the most disturbing part? The people building these getaway cars aren't hiding in the shadows. They are operating in the tallest skyscrapers in London and New York. They aren't breaking the system. They are the ones who wrote the user manual for it. We are peeling back layers of an onion that seems to have no center, but as we look closer, we start to see the fingerprints of the architects. And that is where the story gets truly dark. Because you can't move trillions of dollars without help. You need facilitators. You need a banking system that is willing to look the other way, or worse, a banking system that actively designs the products to make this evasion possible. I want you to really think about the scale of this deception. It's easy to get lost in the numbers, but remember, every dollar hidden is a decision made by a human being to prioritize their accumulation of wealth over the collective good. If you are following this trail with me and you are starting to see the matrix behind the money, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with just this phrase: I see the invisible. Let's see how many of us are really paying attention to what's going on here, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And what comes next is the answer to the question, who is letting them get away with it? When we imagine the bad guys in a story about financial crime, our minds, conditioned by Hollywood movies and crime dramas, almost instinctively drift to a specific aesthetic. We picture dimly lit back rooms filled with cigar smoke, sketchy figures meeting in abandoned warehouses, or ruthless cartel bosses operating out of fortified compounds in the jungle. We imagine the money launderer as a desperate character sweating over a bag of cash in a basement. But the hidden truth of the global economy is far more sterile, far more polished, and infinitely more terrifying. The facilitators of this $32 trillion heist aren't wearing balaclavas. They are wearing Italian silk ties. They aren't meeting in back alleys. They are meeting in glass-walled conference rooms on the 50th floor of skyscrapers in Manhattan, London, and Frankfurt. The engine of this offshore machine isn't run by the underworld. It is run by the pillars of the overworld. We are talking about the most prestigious names in banking history. Institutions like Goldman Sachs, HSBC, JP Morgan, and Deutsche Bank. This is where the narrative shifts from a story about individual greed to a story about systemic design. It is crucial to understand that these banks are not merely passive accomplices who accidentally let some dirty money slip through the cracks. That is the PR version of events they sell to the public after a scandal breaks. The reality, revealed through decades of investigations and whistleblowers, suggests that these institutions are the active architects of the evasion industry. They don't just process the transactions, they create the products, the complex derivatives, the special purpose vehicles, the anonymous trust structures we just discussed. These are products designed by the bank's brightest minds, specifically sold to ultra-high net worth clients to help them bypass the very laws these banks claim to uphold. It is a business model built on a contradiction. Publicly, They are the guardians of the financial system. Privately, they are the locksmiths selling keys to the back door. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject because the scale of this betrayal is often hard to grasp until you look at specific examples. Let's look at the journey of illicit funds. When a drug cartel or a corrupt regime needs to wash billions of dollars, they cannot do it through a local credit union. They need the infrastructure of a global titan. Take the case of HSBC, one of the largest banks on the planet. A few years ago, investigations revealed that for years, HSBC had been functioning as the conduit for violent drug cartels in Mexico and terrorist financiers in the Middle East. This wasn't a computer error. Branches in Mexico actually widened their teller windows to accommodate the physical size of the boxes of cash being brought in by cartel operatives. The bank ignored warnings, bypassed protocols, and effectively washed blood money clean, integrating it into the legitimate global economy. And here is where the mindset of Wall Street becomes clear. You might expect that getting caught laundering money for organizations that decapitate people would result in prison time. You might expect the bank to be shut down, but that is not how this world works. HSBC was hit with a fine of nearly $2 billion. To you and me, that sounds like an astronomical punishment. But for a bank of that size, generating that much revenue, $2 billion is not a penalty. It is simply a line item in the budget. It is the cost of doing business. This is the pivotal realization. Wall Street has calculated the risk. If laundering illegal money generates $10 billion in profit and the fine for getting caught is $2 billion, then the crime is still profitable to the tune of $8 billion. The fine is not a deterrent. It is a tax. It is a licensing fee for criminal activity. This is why the behavior never stops. The decisions made in those boardrooms are based on cold, hard math. As long as the profit exceeds the penalty, the machine keeps running. We have to stop looking at these institutions merely as banks and start analyzing them through the lens of organized crime. In many ways, they operate like a cartel of luxury. They have a code of silence, they protect their own, and they view the law as a variable to be managed rather than a rule to be obeyed. The only difference between a street-level racketeering operation and a major financial institution often comes down to the quality of their suits and the cost of their lobbyists. These revelations strip away the veneer of respectability. When you walk past a bank branch and see the posters of smiling families and promises of secure futures, you are looking at the front of the stage. But behind the scenes, the machinery is greased with money from sources that would make your stomach turn. They have turned corruption into a service industry. The impact of this model is that it incentivizes crime. If the world's largest banks are willing to wash the money, then the barriers to large-scale corruption and trafficking are lowered. The dictators, the warlords, and the tax evaders know that if they can just get their money to a systemically important financial institution, they are safe. The bank becomes the vault, and the bank is too big to jail. And this brings us to an uncomfortable question about the nature of our laws. If the penalty for helping to rob the public purse is just a fraction of the loot, then the law has ceased to be an instrument of justice and has become a tool of the wealthy to formalize their plunder. The system isn't broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to work for the people who built it. We are witnessing a transformation of the economy where the line between legitimate high finance and criminal enterprise has been blurred to the point of invisibility. The bankers act like gangsters, and the gangsters bank like gentlemen. And while they play this game, trading fines for fortunes, the rest of the world is left wondering why the rules seem so rigid for the poor and so flexible for the rich. But there is a catch. Even with all this power, even with the banks acting as the engine of this shadow economy, they still need one more thing to make it all work. They need the law to stay gray. They need a system that allows them to say, technically this is legal. If you are following this and starting to feel that the deck is stacked against the average person, you are not alone. It's a heavy realization that the guardians of our money are often the ones opening the gates for the wolves. If you are with me on this, I want you to drop a comment below. Just write this phrase: the game is fixed. Let me know that you see the reality of this setup, because understanding who the players are is only half the battle. Now we need to understand the rules they are playing by, or rather the lack of them. You might be screaming at your screen right now asking a very logical question. If we know where the money is, and we know who is hiding it, and we know which banks are helping them. Why isn't everyone in handcuffs? This is where we hit the most frustrating wall of this entire investigation. The most shocking thing about the offshore world isn't what is illegal, it is what is fully, 100% legal. We have entered the gray zone. In the legal world, there is a distinct line drawn between two concepts: tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is a crime. It's when you lie on your tax return, hide income, or refuse to pay what you owe. That will get you sent to prison. But tax avoidance? That is considered smart financial planning. It is the art of using the law against itself. The ultra-wealthy don't break the laws. They hire an army of expensive lawyers and accountants to bend them into pretzels. The mindset here is fundamentally different from yours or mine. When you see a tax law, you see a rule you have to follow. When a billionaire sees a tax law, they see a puzzle to be solved. They view the tax code not as a mandate, but as a menu of options. By utilizing these complex loopholes, like the double Irish with a Dutch sandwich, or transferring intellectual property rights to a mailbox in Bermuda, they can technically say they are compliant. They are following the letter of the law while completely torching the spirit of it. This creates a bizarre reality where a multinational corporation making billions in profit can legally pay a lower tax rate than the janitor cleaning their offices. The impact of this is devastating, but here is the kicker. Because it is legal, there is no crime scene. There is no smoking gun. It is corruption that has been sanitized, rubber-stamped, and filed away in triplicate. It is what we call legalized corruption. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because the rabbit hole goes much further than just clever accountants. We have to ask ourselves, if these loopholes are so obvious, and if they are draining the public coffers of trillions of dollars, why doesn't Congress or Parliament or the Senate just close them? Why don't they pass a law tomorrow saying, no more shell companies? The answer lies in the circular economy of power. The reason the laws don't change is that the people writing the laws are financially dependent on the people benefiting from the loopholes. This is the hidden truth of modern politics. It takes an enormous amount of money to run for office. In the US, for example, a Senate seat can cost tens of millions of dollars to win. Where does that money come from? It comes from donations. And who has the disposable income to make massive donations? The same people hiding $32 trillion offshore. It is a perfect, self-sustaining ecosystem. The money goes offshore to avoid taxes. A portion of that saved money is brought back and funneled into super PACs, lobbyist groups, and campaign donations. Those donations ensure the election of politicians who are sympathetic to deregulation and financial freedom. Those politicians then write the tax codes that keep the loopholes open, and the cycle repeats. The offshore wealth essentially pays for its own protection. This revelation changes the way you look at democracy. We often think of corruption as a suitcase of cash handed to a politician under a table. But that is old school. Modern corruption is lobbying. It is a legal bribe. The lobbyists literally write the legislation and hand it to the politicians to sign. The system isn't broken. It was built this way on purpose. It is a feature, not a bug. The complexity of the tax code isn't an accident. It is a camouflage designed to hide the fact that the system is rigged. This forces us to confront a difficult journey regarding our own definitions of right and wrong. We are taught that legal equals moral and illegal equals immoral. But history is full of things that were legal but deeply immoral. Slavery was legal, apartheid was legal, child labor was legal. Today, the systematic starvation of the public state for the benefit of private hoarding is legal. But is it right? When we look behind the scenes, we see that the architecture of this system relies on the public remaining ignorant of these nuances. They rely on the fact that tax law is boring and complicated. They count on you tuning out. Because as long as you think this is just about business, you won't realize it is actually about theft. It is a theft that has been codified into law. The decisions made in these legislative halls are not about the greater good. They are about return on investment for the donor class. The politician is arguably just a middle manager for the offshore elite. This reality transforms the government from a protector of the people into a bodyguard for the rich. It creates a class of untouchables who float above the jurisdiction of the state, while the rest of us are anchored down by the full weight of the law. And this creates a deep, simmering anger in anyone who pays attention. Because you realize that you are playing a game where the opponent is allowed to change the rules in the middle of the match. You are working, saving, paying your share, and believing in the social contract. Meanwhile, the people at the top have shredded that contract, burned the pieces, and used the fire to light their cigars. This is the ultimate betrayal. It's not just about money, it's about the erosion of trust in society itself. If the rules don't apply to everyone, then they aren't rules. They are just tools of oppression for those who can't afford to buy their way out of them. We are watching the transformation of democracy into a plutocracy, where your voice matters less than your net worth. The tragedy is that this money isn't just sitting in a vault doing nothing. Its absence has real-world consequences. Every dollar hidden in the gray zone is a dollar not spent on the things that make a civilization function. And that brings us to the tangible reality of what this theft actually looks like in your daily life. It's not just abstract numbers on a screen anymore. It is the pothole in your street, the overcrowding in your child's classroom, and the medical bill that bankrupted your neighbor. I want you to take a second and really feel the weight of that. It's legal, yes, but does that make it acceptable? If you are feeling that specific mix of clarity and indignation, I want to hear from you. Go to the comments and write this phrase, legal but lethal. Let's mark this moment where we acknowledge that just because the law allows it doesn't mean we have to accept it. Because now that we know how they do it and why they get away with it, we need to talk about who is actually paying the bill for this party. It is time to bring this conversation down from the abstract clouds of high finance and plant it firmly on your kitchen table. We have talked about trillions of dollars, shell companies, and banking conspiracies, and sometimes those numbers get so big they lose their meaning. So let's talk about something very real. Let's talk about your paycheck. When you get paid, whether you are an employee, a freelancer, or a small business owner, the government takes its cut before that money even hits your bank account. It is automatic. It is non-negotiable. If you are a nurse working a double shift to save lives, or a teacher spending your own money to buy supplies for your classroom, you are paying a significant percentage of your income to keep society running. You pay for the roads, the military, the safety net, and the infrastructure. You are playing the game by the rules. Now compare your reality to the lifestyle of the person utilizing that offshore vault we've been discussing. While you are paying 20, 30, or even 40% of your hard-earned income in taxes, a billionaire with a sophisticated offshore structure might effectively be paying zero, or close to it. This isn't an exaggeration. There have been revelations in recent years showing that some of the wealthiest people on the planet pay a lower effective tax rate than their secretaries. How is this possible? Because they don't earn income like you do. They accumulate wealth through assets held in these tax-neutral zones. They don't take a salary. They take loans against their holdings. They live in a world of unrealized gains that the taxman cannot touch. The impact of this disparity is not just about jealousy, it is about survival. The bill for running a civilization has to be paid by someone. If the people with the most money have found a way to opt out of paying that bill, guess who is left holding the check? You are. We often hear the word austerity tossed around in the news. Politicians stand at podiums with serious faces and tell us that we simply cannot afford better schools or modern hospitals or to fix the potholes that are wrecking your car. They tell us we need to tighten our belts. They tell us the budget is tight. But here is the hidden truth they rarely mention. The money isn't gone. It has just been moved. When $32 trillion flees the global economy to sit in a vault in the Cayman Islands, that is $32 trillion that isn't circulating in our communities. That is money that isn't building bridges, funding cancer research, or hiring firefighters. The scarcity that we are told is a natural fact of life is actually a manufactured condition. It is an artificial scarcity created because the abundance is being hoarded offshore. This creates a terrifying transformation in our society. We end up with two distinct worlds living side by side. In one world, the world of the offshore elite, there is unlimited liquidity, private jets, and access to the best healthcare and legal protection money can buy. In the other world, the world you and I live in, there is a constant struggle for resources, crumbling infrastructure, and a feeling that the safety net has holes in it. The most painful part of this journey of realization is understanding that your hard work is effectively subsidizing their evasion. When the government runs a deficit because of lost tax revenue, they either cut services, which hurts you, or they print more money, which causes inflation, which also hurts you. In either scenario, the purchasing power of your labor is diminished to cover the gap left by those who refuse to pay their share. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because the psychological toll this takes on a population is immense. It creates a deep, resonant frequency of cynicism. When you realize that the game is rigged, it becomes harder to wake up every day and play by the rules with a smile on your face. It challenges your mindset. You start to ask, why am I working so hard to support a system that doesn't support me back? We are told that wealth trickles down. That is the economic theory we have been fed for decades, that if we let the rich get richer, eventually, some of that prosperity will find its way to the rest of us. But the offshore vault proves that gravity doesn't work that way in finance. Wealth doesn't trickle down, it shoots up and out. It leaves the country entirely. It doesn't get reinvested in local factories or local jobs. It gets parked in static assets, hiding from the tax collector, doing absolutely nothing for the economy that helped create it. Think about the decisions that are made every day in your local government. We can't fix the library roof. We have to cut the after-school program. We don't have enough ambulances. These aren't just budgetary issues. They are the direct consequences of revenue leakage. Every time you drive over a bridge that feels unsafe or wait 6 months for a medical appointment, you are experiencing the physical manifestation of offshore tax evasion. This isn't just about accounting. It is about morality. It is about the breaking of the social contract. The deal was supposed to be, we all contribute and we all benefit. But when the people who benefit the most contribute the least, the contract is void. It creates a society fueled by resentment, where the average person feels, rightfully so, that they are being taken for a ride. The revelations emerging from the financial underground show us that this isn't an accident. The austerity is for the poor. The socialism is for the rich. They capitalize their profits and socialize their risks. When they need a bailout, they come to the taxpayers. When they have a profit, they run to the islands. It stirs a very specific kind of anger, doesn't it? It's not just about the money. It's about the disrespect. It's the audacity to live in a society, enjoy its protections, use its workforce, and then refuse to contribute to its maintenance. It is the ultimate act of selfishness, codified into a business strategy. And perhaps the most disturbing part is how normalized this has become. We are almost trained to admire the genius of the billionaire who pays no tax, rather than condemning the parasite who drains the host. We need to shift that perspective. We need to look behind the scenes and see this for what it is, a massive transfer of wealth from the working class to the idle asset class. You are the one keeping the lights on in this country. You are the one paving the roads with your payroll taxes. You are the one funding the future. And you have every right to be furious that there are passengers in first class who haven't paid for a ticket. If this strikes a chord with you, if you feel the weight of this unfairness in your own life, I want you to acknowledge it. We need to stop pretending this is normal. Head down to the comments and type one simple phrase: I am carrying the weight. Let's see how many of us are actually paying the bill for this global party. But here is the thing. Secrets this big are hard to keep forever. The vault door is thick, but it's not impenetrable. And recently, some cracks have started to appear. But even the most impenetrable fortresses have a structural weakness, a fatal flaw that the architects didn't see coming. For decades, the offshore world relied on one absolute currency: silence. The entire model was predicated on the idea that what happens in Panama stays in Panama. But the ground is shifting beneath their feet. We are beginning to see cracks in the foundation of this financial castle, and those cracks are letting the light in. The irony of this transformation is almost poetic. The very technology that allowed the ultra-wealthy to build this complex web of evasion, the digitization of finance, the instant global transfers, the server farms, is the exact same technology that is now tearing it down. In the old days, if you wanted to expose a bank's secrets, you would have to physically break into a filing room, photograph thousands of documents, and smuggle them out in a trench coat. It was slow, dangerous, and inefficient. But today, the game has changed. A single whistleblower with a thumb drive can download 40 years of corruption in the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee. This is exactly what happened with the Panama Papers and the Pandora Papers. These weren't just leaks. They were data tsunamis. We are talking about terabytes of information, millions of emails, contracts, and bank statements that were never meant to be seen by human eyes. These revelations did something that no regulation ever could. They shattered the illusion of invincibility. Suddenly, the names of prime ministers, kings, celebrities, and billionaires were plastered across the front pages of newspapers worldwide. The veil of secrecy was pierced. The hidden truth that was buried under layers of shell companies was dragged into the sunlight. And if there is one thing that mold and corruption hate, it is sunlight. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject because the psychological impact of these leaks is far greater than the legal fallout. For the first time in history, the public got a look behind the scenes of the global operating system. We saw the receipts. We saw the emails where bankers joked about hiding assets from the tax authorities. We saw the deliberate decisions made to strip nations of their wealth. This has triggered a profound shift in the collective mindset. For a long time, the narrative sold to us was that inequality was an accidental byproduct of capitalism, that some people were just smarter, worked harder, or were luckier. But the leaks proved that this inequality is not an accident. It is a project. It is a feat of engineering. The gap between the rich and the poor isn't widening because of natural economic forces. It is widening because there is a pump continuously siphoning resources from the bottom to the top, hidden behind a wall of secrecy. The castles of cards are trembling because the secrecy is no longer guaranteed. Every banker, every lawyer, and every billionaire playing this game now has to live with a new fear. Am I next? They have to wonder if their disgruntled IT guy is copying their hard drive right now. They have to wonder if the server in the British Virgin Islands is truly secure. The digitization of the world means that secrets are harder to keep than ever before. Information wants to be free, and in the digital age, a leak can travel around the world before the truth has a chance to put its pants on. This creates a fascinating dynamic where the power is slowly, agonizingly shifting back toward the public. The genie is out of the bottle. We know how the trick is done. We know that the magic of wealth creation for the 0.01% is often just the sleight of hand of tax evasion. And once a population understands that the game is rigged, the game becomes much harder to play. The journey toward transparency is messy and slow, but it is happening. Governments are under immense pressure to act because their voters are now armed with evidence. We are seeing a push for global minimum corporate taxes. We are seeing registries of beneficial ownership being created so that you can't hide behind an anonymous trust anymore. These are small steps, but they are steps that were unimaginable 20 years ago. The offshore vault was built to withstand laws, audits, and investigations, but it wasn't built to withstand the internet. It wasn't built to withstand the collective processing power of millions of angry citizens analyzing leaked data. The narrative control is slipping from their hands. They can no longer claim that this is just how business works because we have the documents proving that this is how crime works. The most important takeaway from this entire saga is that the system relies on our ignorance. It relies on us finding finance boring. It relies on us trusting the suits on Wall Street. But that trust is gone. We are entering an era of scrutiny. The revelations of the past decade were just the opening shots. As technology advances, as AI becomes capable of analyzing these massive datasets, there will be nowhere left to hide. We are waking up to the reality that the poverty of the many is the direct result of the unchecked greed of the few. And that realization is dangerous to the status quo. It is the fuel for real political change. The story of the offshore world is not over, but the chapter of absolute secrecy is definitely closed. The question now is not if there will be another leak, but and when it comes, who will be exposed? The panic inside the high-rise offices is real. The house of cards is still standing, but the wind is picking up, and the foundation is shaking. If you feel that shift, if you sense that the era of blind trust is over, and that we are standing on the precipice of a new transparency, I want you to mark this moment. The silence has been broken, and it can never be repaired. Go to the comments right now and leave this phrase: "The curtain is falling." Let's show them that we are watching, that we are waiting, and that we are no longer buying the illusion. Because the only thing necessary for the triumph of this corruption is for good people to do nothing and to know nothing. But now we know. Look, I know this isn't exactly light entertainment. Sticking around for a deep dive into the mechanics of financial history and global corruption takes a different kind of curiosity. It takes a willingness to look at the uncomfortable truths that most people just scroll past. If you value this kind of content, where we don't just skim the surface but actually try to understand the machinery of power, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We are going to keep following the money wherever it leads, and having you here makes this community stronger. And if this video added a new layer to your understanding of how the world really works, hitting the like button is a simple way to show your support. It tells the algorithm that these stories matter and helps us reach more people who are ready to wake up to these realities. I also want to know who is really digging deep with me. If you made it all the way to this final minute, drop a comment down below saying, "I am paying attention." It's a small signal, but I'll know you're one of the few who actually listens to the full story, and I really appreciate that. But the rabbit hole goes even deeper than this. The banking system has roots that go back further and are even more entangled than you might think. There is a video right here on the screen that connects perfectly with what we just talked about. Click there, and let's keep this conversation going. I'll see you over there.